I analysed all 12 game wins from the FNCS Global Championships to see what it takes to win a game on the biggest stage possible. This video is going to be a lot longer than my usual videos on this channel, and something like this I would usually upload on my extra channel, but for the Global Championships I decided to put it on my main channel just so that there's a lot more eyes on some of the big moments from the Globals that you've probably missed. Alright, so game number 1 was won by Canada, Rapid and Bolts, landing at Swarmy. Alright, they're actually taking a huge split. As you can see, sure, they're landing in Swarmy, Bolts and Canada down there. However, you've got Rapid that's landing up here. Now there's a few chests, there's like 2 that spawn here, you've got 1 here, there's a few in this little cave down here, and most importantly, I think they get access to this. I'll actually need to see if they get the flag capture or not, but this gives you 250 gold from memory, which is really important for going into black markets and buying heals later on. So let's see if they actually end up using this. This also gives you some OXR rank, which is super useful. Unsurprisingly, Rapid is going to capture it. So it's now captured, it's 59 gold, now it goes up to 259. Okay, so it gives you 200 gold, and obviously a little bit extra loot there. It's a little risky because they could get snuck on by the OXR team, but obviously they do not. One of the main benefits down here, of course, is the huge amount of slurp trucks they have. They have one here, they have a geyser here, which I already know some of the strats that they're going to use with that layer, so I'll come back to that in a second. And as you can see, Canada is chucking a bunch of the heals back that he gets. Now, because there's so many chests, there's so many of these bug spawners, there's a lot of these, I can't remember what you call the hive chests, I can't remember what these are called. They all give you a huge amount of heals, so he's juggling them all back to inevitably surge trade. Yay, super fun meta. So you'll see here, by killing the last bug spawner that is here, that their crates have spawned, so they're B crates when they get to the OXR rank number B. This gives you guaranteed crash pads, and of course the boon, I can't remember actually exactly what it does. Now that means every single one of them can get crash pads. At the same time, Rapid here is starting to build the old trusty trading tower, which is going towards OXR. So pretty much for the entire 6 games that's on day number 1, that was what has been watched so far. This is before day number 2, so I don't actually know who wins the whole tournament, etc. But yeah, they were just trading back and forth here, so nothing super exciting. Really good drop spot to trade with, very good team to trade with as well. Surely this is the most exciting part of this analysis. It's just a little couple shots, couple trades, getting storm surge damage with another team who's doing the same thing. Woo. I'm actually wrong. There's a geyser surge trading strat, which they are not doing. We'll come back to that later, because that's actually something Queasy is doing in one of his game wins. I will say those peak that Canada's doing is really good. Looking over a ramp, obviously they're really protected with tops to make sure they don't get crash padded on, but doing this large wall edit, like the 6 tile to the left, not only gives you the peak over the ramp, but also gives you the right hand here. So it gives you basically the lowest chance of actually getting shot while doing that, which I've not seen too many teams do use, so pretty cool. That's about as good as the storm surge trading analysis will get for this video, I'm pretty sure. All right, now they traded a fair amount of damage. I'm sure it's very balanced. They used the high fizz pad, which basically every single team has been using. Not every single team, that's not true. A lot of the top teams have been using. I'm interested in seeing where they end up landing in the third zone, because like surge is not a problem. What do they actually carry? So Canada has 2 fizzes, 3 bigs, 2 fizzes, 3 bigs. Basically, they have 5 fizzes split between them. That is insanely strong. And interesting, they're only looking to carry 1 stack of crash pads as well. Maybe that's just because they have so many fizzes, so many heals. Similarly, only 1 pump, SMG and rapid. So pretty diverse loot pool generally. Also, the timing there of that rotation was really nice. As they hit the launch pad, the 4th zone showed up. So this rift pod, this is going to spawn here, spawns in the 4th zone. So by using the fizz pad to be up in the sky when the 4th zone appears, they know exactly where to land to go and then grab it later on. I'm not actually sure if they're going to go for it. Yeah, there it is. Okay, Rapid's looking for it. Yep, tarp straight towards it. That gives you 3 of the good slurp juices, and of course the mythic minigun. Now this minigun was a huge part of their success. So more importantly, the massive launch pad strat that they played there to get high up is actually a massive part of the reason why they ended up winning this game too. Surge trading also super important, because if you look, the ammo is now so depleted, right? 84 for Canada, 200 for bolts. So like if they need to get a ton of tags or spray later on, they don't have that much to work with. So having this minigun again is even more important because they don't actually have that much AR ammo. And basically this game is almost set up for success already too. They're now in the center of the 4th zone on a hill. Wherever the 5th zone goes, they're gonna have good rotations. They've got pretty much all of their storm surge needed. They've got cat mats, they've got mythics, they've got as many fizzes as you could want, and slurp juices. So far, like, game plan has been absolutely flawless. I also take back what I said earlier about the ammo, as Canada now has 400 AR because Rapid was holding it all. So they actually do have a good amount of assault rifle ammo. And now the 5th zone has appeared. They can make it insta edit. Like, look how free this rotation is. And because it's a kind of water zone, you basically know that the 6th zone that's going to be a partial more than likely is not going to pull anywhere to the west. So just by staying kind of, I imagine, relatively high up on this south side where this hill is here, they give themselves a good chance of pulling it. Obviously there's a pad there, but they could pull the zone in this area. If it pulls over here, that's fine. If it pulls max distance, it is what it is, but there's probably not going to be many teams over to the west, so they'll have a relatively free rotate. Yeah, and unsurprisingly, first storm surge, there's really warnings really popped up, and they're 900 above in that first game. So yeah, their surge trading strats working very, very well. Rapid AFK, he's actually looking at his map at this point, planning things out. And if you notice, as the zone's about to push, they don't even know where it's going to go. However, they fizz straight away. So they've already got the fizz on so that they can instantly hit a crash pad. So again here, they should be jumping over everyone. So you'll see there's a lot of teams that are now just behind them because they've been slower on their rotates. So Rapid Canada bolts have essentially bunny hopped to get in front of them. So this early rotate, I've said this a lot of times this season with these crash pads, getting in front of teams is so important. Because imagine if they'd waited, like all of these teams around here, like, what are you guys doing, boys? Middle Eastern team, Sahi's team, that's surprising there so far, man. Cammy's team here. You know, a lot of these teams could have been ahead of them and holding them. But now, hopefully once they get in and ahead, they're going to be able to hold all of those teams further behind and get maybe some elimination? Probably not. But yes, some free stuff regardless. Ooh, bad wall to be placed there, blocking them off. But Rapid's at least got the minigun to try and counter any fire. All right, Rapid is giving Canada the SMG, or the SMG, the minigun, which makes a ton of sense going into the end game because, quite frankly, Rapid's going to be far too busy tarping. The thing with this is, even if you've got capped ammo, you do still have to be relatively careful on how well you use it, because if you just spam it, it runs through ammo and mini ammo so unbelievably quickly. So I'd be interested in seeing how he uses it here. Immediately just on any wall. Instant knock onto Cold. Game number 1. The big reigning champ. Not reigning champ. Well, yeah, the reigning. Yeah, they did win. Sorry, I'm doing a total drone. Ignore me. Cold down. He's not had a good first day. I like that they don't overcommit into that though, right? Like they got a knock. They're not just jumping in. They don't need anything. 90 builds, 100 builds, 100 builds. Like they don't need a refresh. They don't want to be too greedy here. So this is really good just to make sure they sit back and don't jump and put themselves into a bad position to absolutely milk this game. And look, honestly, Canada sprayed for about 10 seconds and he was down to 300 ammo. So that's like 350, 400 ammo they'd already used from this minigun at that point, which is, it just rips through it. So they will have to be relatively selective about their time to spray. Love that they're pulling west, right? The zone opens up here. So the position that they were in here, pretty much on the storm, they ended up moving slightly south and round to get round to the side of everyone. So they're going to have priority over everyone. I already know this zone pulls across the water to the other side. They'll go to Brazil team. Look at them. They know the Deadside strats. They're over here. Yeah, for these guys, so they're actually probably ahead of all these teams. So this next rotate should hypothetically be easier. Again, because what I've said, they've got priority over all the teams behind them. So like a really nice small little adjustment that they made to change the layers. All right, zone has pulled max. They spent a little bit of time at the backside to spray. Insta crash pad. Good job to go left just to land on some of the land here. Again, look at the earliness. Like I can't believe a lot of these other teams haven't gone yet. There was about a 5 to 10 second wait there where none of the other teams have gone. Let's see if a lot of them are kind of stuck. Yeah, a lot of the other teams are kind of like stuck in behind. Like, you know, Pixie team would be tough for them to rotate. A lot of these teams kind of box with other teams fighting them or around them. So even though they took a couple seconds there before they ended up actually rotating, ended up working out quite nicely for them because they still managed to get to the front side early. Okay, now they're actually slightly below, or almost below, sorry. I was about to say, what the? Okay, I don't know what just happened there. Maybe it was fake surge. They were like 200 above and it was starting to drop and then all of a sudden they're 1,000 above. So I take that back. Super freaky elim though with the minigun. As soon as someone gets near them, I guess all three of them look in the same direction. The output's just absolutely nuts with this thing. Another fizz. Corner crash. Very, very nice. Great tarping from Rapid. Doesn't bother about blocking the back or anything. He just trusts in his teammates to come in. Nice little fizz tarp too, using wood too. So basically just using a little fizz, bouncing off the roof. I've not seen too many teams do that efficiently this season. I feel like a lot of teams end up just relying too much on the crash pads. And just, you don't need to use any hard mats there. It's also a really good time for Rapid to switch to wood, so they're not just wasting it. Because you don't need the hard mats to avoid being sprayed because you're in the tarp for such a short period of time. Another thing to note is they're extremely passive. Like this endgame has been so passive. They're essentially, because they have so many mats, they're focusing on every rotate and then they're kind of just sitting and doing nothing. This storm tank is really nice too. Rather than actually opening up anything, right? They fizzed. Let me actually go back and watch that so I can show you. So yeah, as I was saying, this rotate extremely nice, right? They actually let the storm catch up a little bit, which they could do because Rapid has two splashes. I think anyone else has splashes? No. Okay, just 2 splashes here. They end up throwing the crash pad inside, and then rather than editing the top here, they edit the wall in front, which means that they bounce their head off. So they're fizzed at the minute. So as they crash pad, they're only going to go a little bit forward. And this is what a lot of teams are struggling with at the minute, because a lot of teams in this scenario, if you try to like do a crash pad at the top, you're just in storm. You're going to take like 4 or 5 ticks to storm, and that's just absolutely not worth it. But by crash padding inside the box with fizz and bouncing off of that ceiling, that means what? They went like 3 to 4 tiles forward here, but that was so important. And then because Rapid's now at the front side, he's able to drop down and claim this really, really nice layer there with a bunch of space claimed too. And I imagine this is probably more where Canada's going to start being a little bit more aggressive. Actually, probably not. I take that back because they still have tons of mats. And there's the 2 splashes that came out, of course, because they potentially tanked the storm earlier on. And now, yes, now you can see they're a little bit more active, right? Canada and Bolts looking for angles, looking for sprays. They see wood down below. And in particular, this shreds through the Flixie's builds down below because obviously he's just sitting in wood. It doesn't actually, it's funny, it barely does that much damage like per shot, but because the structure damage is so high, it just rinses through its mats and just gets some damage, and it more scuffs other teams than actually picks up elims. Now they've claimed low ground, and again, with the minigun on low ground, basically all they need to do is look at anyone on your layer or slightly above you, and you're going to instantly be able to chop them out straight into your box. So see, low ground layer is claimed. Great amount of space too. A lot of mess mist down behind them, right? Like they have no clue what's going on there, but he can just sit and spray that, clear everyone out. That's one onto Upple. Bolts managed to get that elim onto him. Seems like they literally have the entire low ground claimed. Veno's just running along down below, just all by himself. That means Canada can potentially get a little refresh in mats, but it's only the wood. I think he managed to miss the hards, but it wasn't too much anyway. Top 5 scenario now. See where he can look out. Swizzy on his lair. Down below. Good beam. Again, height starts to spray him back, but because of the thing they had earlier, they managed to grab themselves. Ooh, I was gonna say the slurp juice pop, but Rapid goes down. Do they manage to get the double revive? They do manage to get a double revive in the end, well, the final moving zone, which is really nice. Again, possible because of so much space claimed. No more slurp juices. Bolts manages to take over the tarping. Does a great job. Again, the 2x1 tarp, or the 2x6 tarp, or something that it is at this point. Ooh, can drop it down. Again, let me look at that. Let me look at exactly what happened there. Okay, so they're on low ground. They have so much space claimed. Everyone who has no mats is falling down below. You can see Canada's doing a really good job tracking exactly where Reason is, right? He's just kind of seeing his footsteps. This guy's running on the floor, sprays him down, melts him, and then because Bolts are looking the same direction, he's able to pick up an easy elim too. Same thing, Canada's are tracking exactly where is Chap, where is Chap. If I keep spraying this, I'm going to knock him straight down. There he is. His teammate's able to pump him when he goes down, and that's Chap wiped out too. Rapid goes down again, unfortunately. I'm not really sure how, but now it's a 2v2. Who's on height? It's Chicho. Nice shot onto the backside. Beautiful double pump from Canada, and another nice shot onto Tayson to wipe him out. Beautifully played by these guys. Amazing tarping and IGLing skills, in particular in the mid game by Rapid. That was really impressive. And then that minigun going crazy. So let's jump on to game number 2. Now, game 2, 3, and 4 were won by Swizzy, Queasy, and Moustache. Now, they're so far in the lead. I'm obviously going to predict that they're going to win, which means I'm actually going to make a full video on the winners. So another video. So I'm going to gamble, because as I'm recording this, this is before day 2. So I actually don't know if Queasy's going to win, but it does look like he is going to. Maybe this will age horribly. So I'm not going to cover their strategy too in depth in this video, because I'm going to do that in another video, which will be out in around a week's time, maybe a little longer than that. But what I want to cover is their general principles of how they play height, because they won 3 games in a row from height, so it makes sense to actually explain their strategies here. All right, so in game number 2, the zone pulls pretty max from them. You can see they're kind of up here in the top right, and it pulls down south. So they actually sit and wait. Very to contrast, yeah, I totally, in contrary, whatever, my English is clearly failing me at this particular minute, to Canada's team, whose Canada's team instantly went in every single rotate. They're taking their time. They're actually waiting for the zone to start moving, and they're starting to look ahead. They're going for tags, going for shots, going for anyone and weaken them down, in particular other height teams. Obviously, it just depends. If someone rotates there, it is what it is, and they claim height. So now they can use their fizz. They can break out this little cone that they have here and go for a fizz rotate with the cone, so they bounce off of that. And now at this point, you can see as he's rotating, there's absolutely no one established on height. But this is still early. This is 8th zone, but they don't care. Now, in one of the interviews, Queasy was asked, like, what point is it too early? When do you take height? And he basically said it's never too early to take height. Now, a lot of people would say 8th zone is insanely early to take height, but the idea for that they go for is that if you go up in the 7th, 8th, and 9th zones and get good zone pulls, well, you're already on height. So taking it this early and trying to invest some mats early puts you into the position to be able to win. Obviously, if they had like 5 builds, this is probably not the play to make. But from here, if they get a good zone pull, then they're already in the position to win. A lot of people asked, I saw on Twitter yesterday, someone said, I can't remember who it was, but they said, how does Queasy always know where the zone pulls? And it's not necessarily that Queasy always knows where the zone pulls. There are some ways you can predict some of the earlier zones, but it's just he keeps putting himself in the positions to take advantage of a good zone pull exactly like this. See, when now the zone pulls towards him, the next one, he's already covered so much space on top of height, and it's going to be very difficult for any team to take it from them after this. And then the loadouts they've gone to choose are interesting, because every single one of them has a revolver. Not a single one of them is using a pump shotgun. And that's because as they're on height at this kind of relatively early place to hold it still, anyone who's using the crash pads, which is the main mobility meta obviously this season, people fly up in the air. You can do stuff like this. Like that's for Doxy's team, who's having an insane game. I don't know if they were necessarily going for height or if they were just making a rotation or not. They were probably trying to go for height, but because they're aware and they all have the revolver pistol, you can do stuff like that where you get a super free elim. I'm not sure if they got the body from that or not. It does look like they did manage to, and again, now that's essentially just a free refresh. If zone pulls max, and obviously you can send, say, Queasy down, for example, here, whilst the other two are looking to make a connection, and then connect up to the front, and then Moustache and Swizzy can either tarp over as they're doing now, or they can hit that crash pad later on. So super duper solid height holds from them. The general strategy will stay the same through the next 2 games, but I will jump in and have a look at those too. And again, remember, if Queasy wins, which is what it looks like, then I will be doing a full video later on. I will be going much more in depth on the strategy. If not, rip. Maybe I'll have to do an extra video on it. So now this game, they did manage to get both exotics. I think they got both bunkers in this game, if I'm remembering correctly. All right, zone pulls absolutely max. This time they go for an instant rotate with the same style of crash pads. But because this pulls into Deadside, right? As you notice, there was no one here. The zone previously was like this. I can't remember what it was. Either way, this was Deadside. They scouted it out. So yet again, he's getting there early. No one's established. He can just go up and just claim it straight away. And now, slightly unfair, you've got Swizzy with the exotic AR, which again, I will cover more in the other video, assuming that they do win. Like, Mirstash with the mythic revolver. Like, this just isn't fair on height. They get so many elims. This is a 16 elim game, and they only have 3 at this point. So they actually managed to get 13 more elims in the end game, which is very impressive. Now, look at this position that they're in here. Zone is opening up. Like, this is Deadside here. You don't need to play like full Deadside all the way over here because, I mean, you're so far away from everyone. But by putting themselves in a position like this, right, where they're kind of situated at the edge of the line where everyone is, they're still so far away from all of the congestion. Now, I guarantee you, as soon as that zone pops, they're going to go. Look, they got the crash pads ready. Insta-go on that Deadside, right? So, like, they know it's Deadside. No one's there. You've already been aware of it. Zone pulls there. They're in that good position. They can instantly crank up on height for the 3rd game in a row, because this is now game number 4, and get their 3rd win. Now, what's really important about this, though, is that height's even more powerful in a game like this. On a Foxy Floodgate zone, which I'm spoiling, it does end up pulling this way. A height hold is so much more important. Like, look how connected they are up here. No one's chopping them. No one's doing anything. They invest in that early height hold. And then when zone pulls this way, so many of the teams actually end up going down. So let's actually end up see what happens here. 9th zone's about to pull. If you see the mini-map, yep, it pulls right off Foxy down here. So by them already holding height at this time, way up above, they're in such an advantage, right? Watch how many teams down here are going to drop down and go down into the water, do stupid things like drop layers, things like that. They have Vico's teams all the way down. Chap's team's pretty low on the right. They end up dropping down. You've got this like good kind of mid-ground have established here. Click's team goes to pass. But like, look at what the advantage that Queasy team has here. I really like the fact that Swizzy and Mirstash are also double layering up above as well to make sure they don't get crash padded on. But like, you have all these teams who've dropped down, and now the zone, guess where it's pulling? It's pulling straight back up. So for Queasy on height, he has such a massive advantage because he can just obviously walk back up when all of these teams down below now have to kind of climb up this massive floodgate that's up in front of them. Same with a lot of the teams here. They're okay, but they have to go through a lot of these awkward layers if we kind of fast forward through a lot of this. See how the teams down below do. They get stuck. Picks damage. Dharma is struggling down there. Let's see if they end up actually getting up. Yep, they're in this awkward point where they're getting clustered in here. They might actually manage to make it up. It's all good. And then on height, you know, you've just got Queasy's team who are just completely chilling. I just don't even need to do anything. So the early investment from them and like being aware of where Deadside pulls and being the first to get it, who's there, who isn't, is extremely important part of their strategy. So apologies about skipping through their games. I'm just want to do a whole other video on it. So game 5 was won by Veno, Vico, and Flixie. Now this is something I saw them complain a lot about afterwards. That's actually the bus paths. Now this isn't something you usually hear a lot of complaints about, but they're landing at Canyon Crossing, and they want to end up fighting for the spot that's down here. So this area, so you know, you saw Veno's team for the most part landing on this side, whereas on this side you saw Coyote's team, and then kind of like Coyote's team would dip down here. Veno's team would have way more loot, and they would kind of follow them. So that's how most of the games beforehand played. Veno's team was winning off spawn, but the thing they were complaining about was the bus paths that were relatively like north of them, which mean that they have to glide in this way. So what that means is they're basically forced to 50-50 on this head here. And as you notice, well, there's one item. Is that it? There's usually a chest up here that can potentially spawn as well, but there's also just one item, and they get outdropped for it. Yuma gets it. Like, what are you meant to do here? So Yuma is able to actually wipe out Veno straight away. Vico goes the other direction and basically just absolutely disappears. So this fight off spawn is crazy. So the fact they've actually managed to end up winning this match from this start is very impressive. The Asia team probably making relatively bad play going this way. I don't know why they let Vico get away. Say Vico has nothing. I really think Yuma probably should have just chased him and wiped him out as well. So yeah, I'm not really sure why they ended up going that way, but basically the game has started off with Vico running this way, Flixie running this way, and Veno just being entirely knocked off the rip. So as a duo, what they do is really nice. They sneak here into Foxy Floodgate, which is where Braids, Diminished, and Visuals are. Now, they obviously know their strategy because this is the surge base that Braids has, trading, I think, with Poyo, if I go over here and remember correctly. Yes, he is trading with Poyo over that direction. So they know the setup. So as we kind of saw with some of the previous teams, they obviously drop a lot of their heals. You can see there's a lot of white heals stacked here. And what Visuals does is it has this launch pad down below. Now, this is the thing about globals is that teams always prep for your strategies and ways to counter it. You can see Visuals flies up into the sky here as he's going to more than likely drop heals back to Diminished. Let me check what his inventory is. Yes, he can't fight. He can't do anything with his loadout. He has a bunch of bigs, minis, he has the fizz, all this kind of stuff, and he's just basically transporting this loot all the way over. But, of course, you learn to counter the strategies. So as Visuals flies up into the air, he's insta knocked out, which allows then Flixie to go and get the finish, and now Vico will end up rebooting. So what this means is that you've got, where are they? Diminished is down here, Braids is here. You've just wiped out one of their other players. So it's a fair 2v2. Those two teams are super far away surge trading. So there's like a 0% chance that anyone is going to push you as you reboot here. So this is like a really super smart way that Veno was able to actually get rebooted by countering other teams' early game strategies surrounding them. In particular, you also often think like if you need to reboot a team, you often think I need to go into Storm and go to like an edge map position. But they've also got a good spot now. It's like in the center of the map that they were able to do it. Plus, because they just got that kill, Veno is now completely stacked. So they've actually been able to counter other teams and be completely benefited from that, which was a really smart play, which obviously set them up to end up winning the game. After trading a little bit of damage there still, you know what? We just need to get more damage to get more early elims. So as a 3v2, now they can jump onto Diminish and Braids. Yeah, Diminish and Braids, who are still left, and now take the 3v2 fight, right? They have the... Ooh, I was going to say the nice advantage to do so. A lovely pre-piece there from Veno. Managed to wipe out Diminished. I'm pretty sure Vico ends up wiping out Braids as well. Yeah, super quick. So they managed to actually wipe out the full trio, basically countering their strat completely. So really super smart off spawns, and it's very clear that they're well prepped into this tournament. They can also now just take over the Surge tower that they had before, right? So they've taken over that Surge position that Braids team was on. And now they managed to get a knock onto Hero, and rather than just continually trading, they're just keying. They're getting straight involved. 3v1 onto, sorry, I can't remember how to pronounce the guy's name. Someone will let me know in the comments. Thank you very much. So yeah, they managed to get 5 elims off the rip just by essentially countering other team strategies. What's funny is this is very reminiscent of their strategy that they did in Chapter 6 Season 2, where they changed their drop spots up a bunch, where they had a ton of different strategies prepared to counter other teams. Now they have like a very normal play style where they're just landing, trading, blah, 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 blah. Obviously they're contested, so the tournament overall has been a little strange, but it's cool to see remnants of other game plans that have worked for them in previous seasons kind of play out in a global championship stage. Now this game's super interesting because it's basically the same as the previous match, right? It's like another Foxy Floodgate game where the zone is pulling this way, and again you've kind of, this is the 5th zone, and you've got Deadside appearing here. Now Veno's team was actually down below, so they ended up dropping inside Foxy, and they harvested basically out the entire of this area inside. I mean, my camera work is really missing right here. You can see they've basically got a ton of extra mats, extra stuff here, and they've built this big tower. So they basically pre-ramped up into this position here. Now that's important because of course if you look at where the zone is here, they've ramped and prepped to get into the Deadside if needed. Remember, if they ended up pulling completely maxed this way and they were stuck down here, they'd have to either go up the zip line, which is super risky, or then later use a bunch of those mats. By pre-building this and kind of pre-tarping their way up, they've still obviously used a bit of materials, 112, 126, 150, but they give themselves the ability to rotate with a crash pad into the Deadside if they need to, which I'm almost certain will happen now. Don't know why I said almost certain it will happen. I've literally watched it. It happens. So there you go. Zone pulls that direction. Not exactly in the same position as the previous game, but very close. They crash pad, get themselves up, and now again, they've kind of cut themselves ahead of a bunch of other teams behind them. Use a second crash pad to go there. Vanya's team, I think, goes for the early height hold here. But for them, they've already put themselves into a good spot. I think I wonder if they should probably go a little deeper into the next zone and kind of do a similar situation before. Wonder if they're going to or not. No, it seems like they're just going to kind of sit here, refarm, trying to get as many mats as possible. I guess maybe going super into the Deadside doesn't make a huge amount of sense in this particular zone because, of course, you're up on the hill, which is kind of in the center. And Deadside, when it opens up, will be down here where there's no teams, but you can easily get held and focused by like Vanya's team that's here, Polio's team who's sitting on height. So I guess this position that they're in is actually just very good. An extremely similar strategy to last time. Zone pulls into the Deadside. Everyone's aware of it. So they make an instant crash pad rotation to kind of cut themselves off. I don't think they ended up actually going as early. Maybe it's because it also pulls downhill. There's a lot of height teams that'll be sitting spraying you. But yeah, guess who else is doing this? I guarantee you, if I remember correctly. What a surprise. What a surprise. Look who's on height, by the way. I know they don't win this game, but who would have thought that for a 4th game in a row, they've early crash padded 8th zone and claimed height into Deadside. Nuts thought. Vico, Veno, Flixie, however, are staggering their rotate, so they kind of got stuck into the middle. Reusing someone else's crash pad, which is really nice. Get themselves onto a relatively good layer. Slightly tough because there is a lot of teams next to them. So it's not actually the best layer, but it's still a pretty good rotate. They managed to get themselves in. Mid-game seeming super strong because of that setup and the elims that they had. 90 builds each. Love the counter damage. So one of the things about the minigun that people seem to often be scared of is sure, it absolutely rips through you, and particularly your build. But if you just shoot someone back with it, they almost always stop like a pressuring you there. So really nice counter damage there from Veno, just to kind of stop that team. I think it was Polio's team there who had the minigun. So because of their earlier rotates, they actually have no crash pads left. So I really like what Flixie does here. And see how he just full tarps. He basically tarps to the front side here and creates a little bit of space, a little box, and then they wait and they stagger. So they're staggering here in this first moving zone, which gives them a chance to like go for frags, go for elims, do whatever they can. But of course, if they just kind of run completely to the front side, keep trying to tarp, they're going to waste a ton of mats. So then when zone basically opens up, as you can see, like zone's pretty much fully opened up. A little bit of fizz, a little bit of layer jump, connect to top up above, and then manage to tarp their way safely in. So they managed to like save. How many mats do you think that ended up being rather than full tarping there that they ended up going from? There was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 boxes that they managed to save just by doing this small little fizz jump. Plus it elevated them up a couple layers and they took literally 0 damage because at that time, a lot of other teams are using their crash pads or they're just fully tarping by themselves. So there's a really nice little kind of stagger to get themselves, saved probably 250 mats, because it's like, or maybe 200 mats, because it's just like 5, 6 full boxes. And they are insanely aggressive too. They know they either need crash pads or they need material refresh in order to actually win the game. So they're getting straight involved. 2 elims down. That's Upple and Focus wiped out. And now what? Matt's almost entirely capped. Well, not really. 100, 38. Super nice. So I love how aggressive these guys are in endgame. The problem is plays like that for them, if they don't work, they're horrible. And unfortunately, a lot of the times they do not work. So their aggression often does work against them sometimes. But in this instance, it's worked out very, very fairly. There's another good instance of that. They were jumping straight onto a wall. Area's not covered. Veno got absolutely hit by a bank. Now he's had to drop out. But it's a high risk, high reward play style where if you're not being super aggressive, well, you're not going to get much out of it. You also got to remember that at this point, they're relatively far down on the leaderboard. So they need a couple big games in order to do well. There they start to get focused by Height, especially I think Height had a minigun there. Someone has a minigun in the lobby. I'm not 100% sure if it was them. So they just go for an instant drop down. Now I do know they take Height this gameplay, this season. Ooh. I was gonna say, I know they take Height, so we'll see how they end up doing that in their classic style. But just look at the level of aggression they have. Like, compare this to the other end games that we've watched so far. No one is being this aggressive at just jumping straight on the walls, pre-editing, doing all this kind of stuff. So, Flixie actually still has a ton of mats. 91 builds. He really should be... Give Veno some wood, bro. Give Veno some wood. There you go. There we go. I've seen the split. Lovely stuff. Now it's 11th zone. This is actually a very good time for them to go for Height. They're at the front side because they're going through their old builds. Actually ended up tanking a little bit of Storm here to end up making sure that they can get to the front side. Good spray onto Pixie. Good damage, breaking through. Maybe this isn't their whole builds. Some of this is actually their builds, yeah, because they ended up editing through it here. Nice little pre-edit to see if they can trap someone down below, but unfortunately not quite yet. We're out into the final moving zone soon. Higgs up above, about to be chopped down. Zone starts to pull all the way back. I think through that full tarp that they've just been through already. Pixie lost down below. Good bang onto him. Yep, Veno's able to pick him up there. Marius somehow able to escape from that. Actually, a good amount of refresh. Matt's refresh onto him. 44, 33, 10. Absolutely enough to go for Height retake. You can see Flixie starting to look up. He's starting to scout. A lot of Matt's put onto him. Let's see how they actually go for the full Height retake here, because it is Queasy's team that they ended up taking it from. So this is the only game so far where Queasy's actually managed to lose Height, and it is to Vico. I'm going to have to actually watch how that happened because I entirely missed that. All right. They have an extremely established Height up above. However, zone, I think, is starting to pull back outside of that. You can see Flixie team down there. Murstache and Swizzy have taken the opportunity to drop. So they drop straight onto Veno's walls here. Veno cranks up in the storm at the backside and throws a crash pad in the double ramp. That is really interesting because that will then send him forward. Oh, he just goes straight up. Oh, actually, I didn't realize he goes straight up if you sprint into that. I thought that was going to send him onto Murstache. That's really interesting. So he manages to just perfectly. That's literally the most perfect crash pad Height. Queasy is aware. So Queasy is aware. Okay, so that's what Veno's doing. Veno's gone up. He's taken a 1 way up on Ultra Height against Queasy. Flixie also followed from that same angle, I think. Was that the same crash pad angle? That's the same angle, but he's just running up. Vico is cranking out the front. So essentially you have like 2 pinching from the backside of Storm and then Veno up from and Vico up from the front. Slightly split, but this is a really good way. They essentially like waited, I think, there until Swizzy and Murstache dropped. And then as soon as they saw them drop, they knew Queasy would be up there by himself and that would be an opportunity to take Height. I mean, I'll be honest, Queasy does boss them on Height though. He is bossing them up on Height. Like, Veno's been pushed off. Swizzy did manage to die though. So let's watch this kind of from their POV slowly because this is a really nice Height retake. All right, so let's go from Veno's POV first. Materials are split. There. Okay, so Veno there, he spots that Swizzy drops. He saw through the cone. He saw that they've dropped. So he knows that Queasy's up on Height by himself. Crash pad straight up. I don't know if Veno's actually spotted Queasy, so he's now been cut off. Just gets to the front side, looks up, misses the shot onto Swizzy. That's unfortunate. Nice angle swap there. Swizzy ended up dropping. Swizzy, unfortunately, getting lackluster. Caught in the piece. Well, no piece there, I'll be honest. I like how Veno then, he's changed his focus to looking down, right? He looks straight down. I think a lot of the teams above him are sorted out. He knows his teammates have done their job. He's making sure other teams don't come up. So he switched his focus. It was really nice. Let's look at that from Flixie and Vico's POV then. Okay, Veno's made the call. He's hit the crash pad. The crash pad seems to have gone. Seems to be shot out. He's jumping front side. Little messy from him. Oh, nice Sean to Murstache there. That was really good. They seem a little disorientated. It's hard. I like the fact they create a bunch of space to get caught up. Got a bunch of his edits. Queasy dropped down onto it. Almost gets him in the full piece. They've jumped in the backside. Interesting decision to drop here. I'm not sure where the call to drop is, though, because you can hear that Murstache and Swizzy are splashing in the backside. And at this point, they also, if I remember correctly, Queasy had the Fizz. Yeah, so he has 300 heals of Fizz, where they can just sit and storm. So I'm not quite sure what the plan to drop was, especially when you hear them splashing behind. I'm not really sure. I don't... Yeah, I can't really analyze that very well. I don't really know the play that they decided to make there. Because now they've lost height again. Essentially, like, they fully lost height, and they almost got jumped on by Queasy and Murstache. Venom does a good job to jump in the backside, though, with the Fizz on. And dies! I missed that. I thought he was about to go crazy. All right, I see that from Flix's POV now. Right, the rest of it from Flix's POV, because he goes crazy. Drops down. Good shot into Canada. Chucks the body out, so they don't have to tank storm damage. They finally realize there's Murstache's team up above them. They end up getting dropped. Flixy drops down to low ground. It's pretty messy. It's a pretty messy endgame. Good shot into Yapko. Great angles hugging that right-hand wall there. Jumps back into Storm. Server lag. Gets the finish onto Queasy. I think, basically, I just think everyone just died in Storm at the final moment there. Okay, bit of a messy endgame. However, they fragged out. 14 elim win. Super duper nice. Their early and mid-game strategy, well, mainly their mid-game strategy to kind of counter Braids and Minish team was really, really well executed. Honestly, one of the best kind of mid-game strats I've seen so far, I would say. And game number 6, the final game on day number 1, was won by Ferdoxy, Pablo, and Chino, who have been 50-50 against Tayson's team off spawn. Now, what Ferdoxy does here is insanely smart, though. So as he's out-dropped by Chino. Chino has better drop for this chest. So he allows him to go to open it, slide kicks him off of it, which pushes him up. That cancels him able to get cancel his ability to get the chest. Ferdoxy then grabs everything because he's in the front, he's closest, and he's kind of looking diagonally down. Now he's got a gun. He gets the shotgun. I think he gets the shotgun. He gets the shotgun, but he does not get the ammo. He gets the mats. Everything he gets here is, well, basically gets everything outside of the mats. And he doesn't shoot Haris because he knows he's got no weapon. He jumps up and sees that Tayson is up here, who usually ends up getting the gun. He didn't in this instance get the gun, but he usually ends up getting the gun up there because he's usually uncontested with the shot, and then chases him instead. So rather than going for the guy who has no weapon, who ended up just actually did end up killing there, he goes for Tayson, who usually does have a weapon. So really, really good like awareness and prioritization of the players around him. Now he has no ammo, which is quite funny. So he is just kind of literally legging it away. Yeah, and then it gets a little messy at this point, but yeah, Pablo ends up almost actually getting one pump there. I've just realized he almost died there. Then it was just a 2v1, so they're able to win it from then. But here's the thing, they don't just get 3 elims. This is a 19 elim game that they end up getting from here. They get crash padded on by Coyote's team, the Asia team, who was fighting Vico off spawn, and they do almost no damage to Pablo, I will be honest. Not the best crash pad play from them, I will be true. But Rock seems to go crazy. Pablo goes crazy. Let's see. Chino and Pablo are some of the best fighters, if not the best fighters on the region. So I want to see how they end up playing this out. He's just kind of running around, I will be honest. Gets to knock onto Rise. That's one down. Ooh, in the box. Nice pump to return. Honestly, I'm finding it difficult to analyze this fight. Because they are just like zero build sprinting around, basically. Okay, Pablo got 2 there. Ferdoxy ended up getting 1. Let's see. I have literally no clue what just happened. How am I meant to analyze that? Chino. Ooh, nice back wall from Chino. Good edit reset. Misses. I gotta watch this in slow-mo. Good pump. Love that he crouches in the corner there behind the window. Man, the right hands from Chino are so good. This guy is so lost. He's so lost fighting them. I was lost analyzing it too. Don't worry. Don't worry, Rise. Or Rize. I don't know how you pronounce it. I was lost too. Right, how does Chino die? Because he ends up getting knocked here, I think, as well. Shot in the back. Good reaction time. Hit the full box. I like how he instantly goes back to helping his teammates out. He doesn't just do anything silly. Nice shot to Yuma. Had Chino like just boxed up and tried to heal there, he'd be milked. But he does jump on the right hand. Super aggressive, so he gets knocked. Ferdoxy's also here. Goes to take the wall. And then this is really nice. You see that Yuma has the tendency to do that window. So Pablo, both of them, Ferdoxy and Pablo, both swing to this far left. So from Yuma's POV, it's really hard to hit Pablo here. Obviously, Ferdoxy's a little bit more exposed. But in this situation, like if you've got someone on your wall here, swinging to this far left is so good. Because like there's almost no good edit they can make. Like if they're a peanut butter, you can shoot them. If they're a window, you still have like a right-hand peek here. One of the best is if they're the scenario and you do a door. You hit a door, then the person has to auto-open it, and then you get a free shot on them. But yeah. And then he's able to pick up Yuma. Bit of a messy fight, but like, yeah, really, really good just base mechanics, obviously, from them. They spotted King's team. Little Fizz crash pad. Oh, PHC, you're not aware, buddy. Good shot, good piece, full box. That's him dead. Managed to get a single elim. It's now a 3v2. Let's see how they end up playing this out. This is one thing I really don't like about trio fights, is that from an analysis, even a viewer perspective, it's really hard just to figure out what's like actually happening. Maybe I'm just really old. But either way, Pablo does a really good job. It takes literally 0 damage that whole fight against King. Whereas King was doing a fantastic job. He almost managed to elim both Fred and Chino. I just kind of want to watch that from King's POV. All right, so they're about to crash pad onto PHZ. He's so unaware. He doesn't know what's going to happen. That's so annoying, bro. He's instant eye. Instantly creates space here. Crouches around. Tries not to be spotted. What's Phaser doing? Phaser's gone. Bro, Phaser's gone. Phaser just left him behind. He's like, sorry, guys. I'm not winning this fight. Respect. Good angle switch up from King. Good layer change. Another good layer change. Great space creation from King, actually. In the 1v3. Ooh, slides in the box. Unreal edits from Chino there. The fact that he was able to not... He got hit 90 and then he's able to block every shot after that is crazy. He's in. The fact that King also didn't kill him there is crazy. Nice right-hand window. The output from King is nuts right now. And then, unfortunately, he dies with the 5 builds there. Good attempt from King. I will be honest. I will be honest. He was absolutely frying the Danish boys there. I think Chino was on like 1 HP or 12 or something. I don't know, or 11, something like that. He was very close to dying. And so was Fred. So crazy, crazy output from King. But obviously, Chino, Pablo, and Fred, they're too good. They're too good. I say that after they're getting absolutely slapped about by King. But yeah, they got 8 elims at this point by the 3rd zone. This is the 2nd game they did that in. There's another game they got 9. If they were uncon, they would be an it would be very hard to beat these guys. Then, in the storm, you hear the reboot there. I think that is King rebooting. Yeah, and it's Queasy is third-partying King getting the reboot, or Phaser getting the reboot onto King and PG. So they got 2 elims there. And then the same thing again. Crash pad. Fly through the sky. They've also been to the bunker, so they've got the exotic pistol now. The minimum one was a Queasy. No, Queasy dead. Yep, Queasy wiped out. Unfortunately, our first place team at the time died. They still managed to actually get a pretty good game out of this Queasy's team from memory. But yeah, that's now 9 elims. 9 elims. Chino is meant to be the best fragger here also. He's been going crazy the whole weekend. But he's only got 1 elim. He's been out-fragged by Floodgate. That's crazy. And one thing I really like about this is that they didn't overstay their welcome here, right? Like, zone pulls very, very far. And it's 4th zone, so not like super, super, super late by any means. But they know if they get stuck here trying to find, like, a random solo, it's just not going to end well for them at all, right? Maybe they also don't want to camp on Queasy's card. Who knows? But at the end of the day, they don't want to sit here and wait too long and get potentially scuffed. Like, if they get into a long, long engagement, it's just not going to really work out well for them. So they go in, get the elim on the reboot, or on Queasy's team, who was fighting the reboot, and then just get out. Then they hit a big fizz pad. Zone also is pretty favorable for them too. Ends up pulling back. So Floodgate's team historically has played a lot of Storm generally. So this actually ends up working out very, very well for them. Yeah, you know, where you have teams who have just been trading the whole game and they're a lot above Surge. They've been fighting and they were like 2,000 damage above Storm Surge just purely by just W keying a bunch of teams. Unbelievably impressive strat. Let's see how they prep for the next zone. 3 seconds until 6th zone pops. Relatively good for them. So relatively favorable. They can probably go into Deadside. This is a rough zone. I hate this part of the map because you have like a massive hill here on the east. You have like what's in Shogun's. I guess the hill is slightly in here at this point. And then this is not, I wouldn't say flat, but relatively open. So like there's a massive elevation here and the chances of the next zone pulling south are pretty wrong. So it's like if you fall down into this area, the next rotates end up being really, really tough for them. So they've hit an early crash pad and I've actually gone down into all of this stinky, low, awkward layer. So I'd be interested in seeing how they end up pulling back up if they need to. They did just open a random chest and get a launch pad. If that allows them to get out of this position, that's going to be too funny. I got a pretty favorable 7th zone, so all that waffle I just said didn't end up actually mattering. But now they've crash padded straight back in. What a surprise. Teams going early into partial zones. Have we ever seen that before? Has that been spotted at one of these single games ever? I don't think I've ever seen that yet. That's sarcasm if you didn't get that. It's been every bloody game. I think this is a really, really nice play as well. So as again, the 8th zone's just about to pop, and you see Queasy and Swizzy building up on height where the zone is about to pull. Now, this is some serious RNG pull. I'll give them that, right? Zone pulls this exact direction. For Queasy and Swizzy, after they lost like Murstache in the storm, a bunch of reboots and stuff went off. They did the same strat, trying to build height in a good spot, and this was such a good play because they end up pulling zone exactly pretty much where they are, which, who knows how deep they could have gone just as a duo if that had gone. But because Floodgate saw that, chopped them out, saw they got white fall damage here, and then saw that the zone pulled exactly that direction. As soon as they've chopped them, they know that team's, I don't know if they're going to be scuffed, but they're not going to be in the best spot regardless. So now it's time to chuck a crash pad down, I would imagine, hit a little fizz, jump straight up. You can see they're starting to get lobby focus too, and now rather than trying to fight them or doing things silly, they've just claimed a free height. Now endgame, I find out this is where their loadout preference is actually really, really important for them because they're not trading. They don't really need to take ARs to deal damage mid-game. Most of their damage comes from like fighting. So Chino Chino has the Stinger SMG. You've got Ferdoxy with the Stinger SMG. And they've got Pablo, who's got double pump. And they all have revolver pistols as well. So if they're on height, similar to Queasy's team, they can bang anyone who's flying through the sky with the revolver pistols. And the pressure and the spray that they get from the Stinger SMGs are so much better than any of the assault rifles currently in the meta. So this is how they... I mean, I'm not going to say this. I'm not going to simplify it and think that's how they get so many elims. That's one of the reasons why they get so many elims in the endgame. Oh my, so much output. So much output from Ferdox there. Just waiting for teams to go. You have the insanely overpowered, no, I was going to say mythic, the exotic Wrecker revolver. Players just flying through the sky, crash padding. That was 1.5. I think you got 2 elims on that, actually. You did end up getting 2 elims there. Yes. Another body flying into storm. Same thing. Also, look at how they shut down this height retake. Now, we saw this same crash pad strat just come out of Veno in the previous match, but because they're not doing it in storm, right, they fizzed. Firstly, when you fizz, it's very obvious where you are, right? Anyone can see you through builds. So you can see immediately that I think Ferdoxy's already spraying them. They cover their tops, they're getting pressured. They put a ramp out here, and then they just throw a crash pad. Like, I'll be honest, boys, this is like one of the worst timed height retakes I've seen in a long time from a top team. The main thing about taking height is you can't just do it in the open and just 50-50 and hope for the best with a random crash pad. You gotta be playing a little better than that. So they basically shut down a height retake straight away, essentially just by keeping focused on that second height team. Vanya's team, not the best height retake, I'll be honest. Then in the very end game, the output that you can do with the double pump is actually nuts. Bang, 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 bang. He does end up getting absolutely... He doesn't end up dying. But the output for both of them is absolutely insane. Pablo, even though he doesn't have a shotgun, same thing. He's prepping for heal off, which I don't think ends up going down to. Chino down below. Spraying into the backside of Storm. Good amount of damage from him. Good disengage. What's they going to do there? Now 3v1. Yeah, they basically just win from here. Little Ferdoxy top frag as well, I must say. Little Ferdoxy top frag. I'm pretty sure someone flies in from Storm and gets maxed. Yeah, there you go. So very, very nice game from them. I'd actually be interested to see what they do on day 2 and how the off spawn goes to them, because I don't see them changing the drop spots at all. They're currently 6th whilst conned, which is super duper impressive. I'm about to cut to game number 7, which will be after actually watching the day 2 events. So let's see if any of my predictions have come completely wrong. All right, game number 7. The first game of day number 2 was won by Ping, Malabuga, and Walks, who only had 159 points in day 1. So they really, really did not perform that well at all. But they clutched up the first game of day number 2. Off rip, a couple free tags from Malabuka onto the teams going to Kappa Kappa, Seti's team. So they had a little bit yesterday. Kind of one of the biggest problems yesterday was the fact that there was an OCE team landing in Kappa, and they ended up, I think, cutting off a huge amount of their loot to the end. Those guys seem to have dipped, and now this gives them so much more loot, so much more access to loot. They get complete outpost uncon. They get this bug spot, which gives them like OXR rank as well. So their off spawn already on day 2 is looking way better than on day 1. Also, Ping's padding all the way down here. They have all this bottom corner. So like in terms of a split, this is probably like some of the most chests that any team actually has access to. Okay, so their surge trading strategy is trading with Panzer. Who are they looking at? Ping's currently looking at Agers. So I think Agers' strat seems to have changed up. I don't know if they are actually yesterday. I feel like yesterday they were trading more with these teams up here, whereas now it seems like they've moved over and started trading with Pings back and forth here. So they're ramping towards, which means Malabuka actually now has 2 teams to trade with. So they can trade with Panzer's team and they can trade with Poyo's team. I'm not 100% whether or not that actually happened yesterday. I've not checked out this corner of the map super in depth yet. But either way, that's how it's working out in this game, and clearly it's worked out for them. We're not going to go too in depth on this strat, let's be real. Now, because of their drop spot in particular, you can see when they're on outpost, they get the flag here, which is 200 gold. They have 50 each off spawn, and then also a bunch of chests and claiming the, like, winning the bug spawn. I think, did that give you gold? I can't actually remember. But they have a lot more, so they managed to buy med kits from here. You see Walks has like over 200 himself, so you can buy a bunch of med kits, which allows him to play Storm for a little bit longer. Malabuka has almost 500 gold here, which I actually don't know how he got. I didn't check that entirely because it seems like there was only 1 capture point. I'll need to go back and actually see that at some point. But because they have so much gold, they can end up playing the Storm for way longer because of the black market. And then you'll look at the loot afterwards. It's absolutely nuts, right? They're gonna have like stacked heals, stacked everything pretty much from that. So really, really good strat for them. Generally playing Storm. Unsurprising that it's still successful at this point in the game. Or successful at this point in the game, sorry. Holy smokes. Okay, so just by defending the outpost, I did not realize I get 500 gold. I don't know if this is in trios, but yeah, by basically getting this big pod drop for after you defend the outpost here, Malabuka gets 500 gold, which is crazy. And then of course Walks manages to get more from down capturing this flag. They'll get a bunch from chest and things like that too. That is insane. So no wonder they have like the ability to basically buy whatever they want from that black market. Then within their surge tower, they're using the fizz high pad. Again, similar thing to we saw what Canada do, but a bit later in the zone. This is during the zone transition. So as you see, the zone then pops up. So now they can basically find themselves a spot. You can see actually they marked the bang on center of the 5th zone here as they're flying through. So similar to Canada done it in the 4th zone where he popped up there to get the pod rift. But this time, Ping, Malabuk, and Walks are doing it to get into the center of the 5th zone, which gives them the easiest rotate into the 6th. They're also going to be like artly stacked capped on mats. So really, really nice little rotate. I like they also have just created a bit of elevation here. It looks like a penis box, but is what it is. They've created a bit of elevation here so that even if they need to get like, if they're below surge from layer, they can do that. And also they built 2 boxes up above. Now, this is something that a lot of people this season have been doing pretty poorly. And it's if you only have one box, you don't have another box that you can actually use your crash pad from when you need to rotate that way. They're in the center, so they have to use a crash pad to rotate to the next zone. So they're pre-building 2 boxes ahead of time so that they can make that rotation later. Unsurprisingly, zone pops. It's, equal distance to wherever they go because they're in the center of it. I don't know what's happening to my game right now. Oh, okay. Seems like a laggy replay. They just crash pad, get straight in, build up. Super free rotation then. Now, where height was super duper free on day number 1, day 2 seemingly already difficult. We've seen in this one game already 2 different teams going straight up for height. Malabuk here crash padded to the front side of zone, built a huge tar, and now is just looking back and double chopping out Queasy's team. So that's Queasy's team chopped there to start with. I think he might get the knock on to one of them at some point. And now they're actually chopping further back into Storm as well. So rather than just chopping once and forgetting about it, they're chopping twice because a lot of the teams who've ended up crash padding don't get anything. So that's a knock on to Agers, bunch of fall damage, and now a free height claim in the 10th zone. Completely different from what we've seen yesterday. Now, I did unfortunately see a ping milk. I'm going to have to see what happened. I saw on the broadcast. Into the backside zone, double minimum. Ooh, and Darm gets the best of him, unfortunately. That's now Walks and Malabuka left up on height. They do win the game. As you know, this is about every win, so it's not exactly that much of a spoiler, but they do go a little bit crazy here. Malabuka actually ends up getting the most elims, so I'm going to watch from his POV, although Walks does do something sick. Malabuka basically also has like no AR ammo. He has 8 shots left, and that is super crucial. Like the last bullet ended up wiping out Canada there. Ammo split, 1 clip. He can hit the little reload, drop down with a fizz. They still have enough bullets to stay up. Okay, he lets Walks loose, blocking off a bunch of side. Good damage, jumping up. Malabuka drops all the way down, gets an elim there. That's 2. Holds the angle. Nice shot into Savage. Chap in the backside. Lovely just running straight into the box, playing around the cone. Super nice. Good elevation change. Misses the pump in the backside. Crash pads to get in. At that same time, Walks managed to pick up Darm there. It's now a 2v1. Pixie down below, and the headshot connects. 6 elims for them, 9 total. Almost the milk from Ping, but game number 7 won by Malabuka, Walks, and Ping. Game number 8 was won by Seti, Yapko, and Panzer. Now, I've already kind of mentioned that they're landing in this kind of south Kappa split. I already said they're trading with Malabuka's team, as we already mentioned, so probably going to skip a good amount of that. Now, one thing that's interesting is they wrapped on the south side of this kind of 5th zone. Now, the 6th zone's popped. They have a relatively like free zone, and kind of in contrast to what a lot of other teams have been doing, which has been going super deep into that zone, they've actually just decided to stay here in this position. Now, it's a bit of a double-edged sword because from here, you can obviously tag any teams who are coming in, so you can get a lot more surge damage on rotate. However, if you pull like a max distance neck zone, it's kind of rough for you. So that's why a lot of the teams end up trying to go into like Deadside of 6th and 7th. But it's not necessarily a bad play, in particular because if you've already invested a bunch of mats here, you're pretty much good to go. Also notice by this little formation of boxes here, you can pretty much crash pad into any direction. Also notice how putting 3 boxes next to each other like this means you can basically crash pad any direction. If you need to crash pad this direction, you can basically set up in these 2 boxes. If you need to go this direction or this way, you can do it in this way. So a triple box actually allows you to set up for a crash pad in any different direction wherever the zone pulls. Luckily for them, they pull the 7th zone though. So unsurprisingly, no elims up until moving zone. This is kind of very similar to a lot of the team wins we've had so far. Like the structure of a lot of the games are very similar. However, Seti's team is a very, very low ground dominant team. It's really rare for them to go for height. So we have to watch, and I mean have to watch, the Seti tarps in the end game. They're absolutely, it's a thing of wonder. Something you could learn from every single time. Interestingly, actually getting straight in, that's Ritual on the low ground there. They managed to actually get an elim. I don't know if they... No, Panzer was able to actually get the elim there on Ritual. So first elim there. Pete Cold also struggling on day number 2, unfortunately. All right, so first thing that's really important is their positioning on the zone. So previous zone was pulling from the left. They went to Deadside and then went to the edge. So now when they tarp down, they're going to be away from everyone else. So notice this. They're ahead here, and all they need to do is either crash pad or just tarp directly along the line of the storm here. Whereas everyone else is going to get clustered into this kind of middle portion here instead. So first moving, they've already set up themselves to have like a clean path through into the actual next safe circle. Okay, a bunch of other teams is there. They just a sprint crash pad, not high, just similar to what we saw earlier where they're just going across a couple layers of builds and then tarping along. Great for Panzer to also take over the tarps. Like Panzer's led a lot of his trios before, so if one of them needs to, the other one can kind of just completely take over here. Now that they're settled in this storm, in this zone, they have been cut off by a lot of teams, and I like the fact that Seti's ended up creating another box here so they can crash pad out if needed to. 10th zone zone is about to pop up somewhere. Let's see where they end up going here. Insta-rotate early again. And now that they're lovely drop down layer. And now that they're tanking Storm ahead of time, Seti's created the 2x2 or like a 3x2 here in Storm to give himself enough space to start tarping from. He is not afraid of tanking white. I'm sure we've got splashes. Yet Panzer has 6 splashes and there's 3 also on Yapko there. So he's doing a good job of trying to really cut any team off as much as possible. Like the cones have an extended range there. So of course, placing one slightly ahead is going to allow them to cut off. He isn't worried at all about going for elims, going for frags. Not in his periphery whatsoever. He's just creating as much space as possible. This is 10th zone and he's not doing a single tarp. He's already doing double or triple tarps all the way down on low here. But because they're on the fully low layer, he's not wasting any builds by placing them below him, of course. So despite the fact that it looks relatively material inefficient to place like this much at once, it's not, because they're not placing anything below them. Then a nice little elim into Murstache. Murstache unfortunately had siphon mats there, so he's not really got much. And as he's doing that, of course, Panzer is taking over. Another beautiful low ground tarp. All the mats split to Seti basically to continue to do the same thing. So notice he's just always staying super duper far ahead. Now, you could do this if you're creating enough space and you have enough mats to start with, but this is a really difficult strategy to do if you barely have, like, say if you've not got enough, like you have to rely on crash pads and things. Notice they've only used 1 crash pad during this entire endgame. They've pretty much just tarped it for the rest of the way. Okay, same thing, even though they're down to wood here. 10 builds, 14 builds, 8 builds. So now they're going to have to start getting a little fraggy. Let's see. Yapko ends up getting a little something here. So let's see how they do this. They've created all the space. He's got the double pump. Just going for floors, trying to drop people down. I mean, it's basically, you know, one more moving zone left. And they've all just basically tarped for their entire endgame. Like, they've got almost no elims still to this point. Swizzy dies in the backside, but Yapko's unable to get anything from it. Looks up above, drops arm down the double pump. So good. Manages to wipe him out too. Now he can take over and tarp just with a siphon mats. Like they're just literally doubling like floors. Literally, not even like, it's obviously above water, so they have to build. Oh, Seti's drowning, unfortunately. But literally just like spamming floors like this, because if anyone drops, right, they have like walks up on height, bolts here, demush down to the backside. If they drop onto this, like imagine if you're up, you're either gonna have to fall and land on this, where they're gonna be able to edit you in, and you can already see Yapko's just like looking up. So if someone drops, they're going to, you know, just drop straight onto him. He's gonna have all the control, or they're gonna have to drop down onto the side here, and sure they can go for a shot or something, but you've also got like Panzer and you've got Seti down below as well. And at this point, like every zone is basically pulled max here, and what, there's only like 4 other people left alive, and because they've just stayed together as a full trio and continued to tarp for this entire end game, it's like they just have the numbers advantage now. Like, this isn't a high elim game. There's nothing flashy. It's just basically unbelievably beautiful tarping, staying to the front side, playing out the mats you've had from a really good mid game, and then just collapsing in on the final 3 players. That's demush down. It's a 4v1, 3v1, walks on height. Like, at this point, he doesn't stand a chance. There's been a height battle this entire game that we saw on broadcast that was really good, but I'm not going to show any of that in this video because it doesn't matter. It's not them that won. The low ground managed to take it. Go home with it. Beautiful stuff. Game number... Was that 8? I think that was game number 8.
Here in the pre-game lobby, I've just noticed, like, Malabuka is sky basing. How many people what is going on? Why is half of the lobby sky basing in the pre-game lobby? They're practicing to play height.
All right, game number 9 was won by Pix, Darm, and Demush. Now, this is the 3rd game in a row won by a team landing in the Southeast. So, of course, we had game 7, which was won by Malabuka's team here. Game 8, which is by Seti's team. And then Pix, Darm, and Demush, which is down here. I think all 3 zones have been to the south as well. I've just literally finished watching the match 2 seconds ago, but I can't quite remember. Either way, we know how this goes by now. You got Darm's team trading down here. Actually, this is slightly different from what it has been previously, now that I look at it. Rather than Darm, Demush, and Pix trading with Cammy's team, who've been up here, I don't know where they've gone. I don't know what's happened to them. They're now further down, actually trading in this. So now this is like a 4-man trading circle. I guess Malabuka's probably get the best of it, and that's probably why they're doing so good on Surge. Pollo's team this game actually struggled with Surge. I wonder if that's because they got W keyed by these guys. Is that what happened? I actually missed this entirely, how they ended up dying. This is a slight tangent, but I do want to see. Oh, Acorn gets jumped. Another team crash pads on their head. Is this 2 teams fully crash padding on them? What's happening here? Oh, it's Pablo, Chino, and Ferdoxy, right? They're going for the full counter here just to jump straight on their head. And Acorn's down below, already super weak. Cool. So I guess from Darm, Demush, and Pix's POV, they get even more tags. Well, I was going to say this probably actually hurts them a little bit because they're getting less trades with these people. But now that means if that team's dead, that means that Walks, Malibuk, and Ping are probably going to have to trade back with them instead. Now, what's really interesting here, actually, is that they just dipped from their Surge Tower. So they got like a good amount of damage, of course, and traded. But before the 3rd zone, they instantly dipped and went into this gas station. So they went across from like where in Storm is here all the way to here. And I wonder if that was to avoid getting W keyed by Ferdoxy's team, because they basically went in here and immediately created like a ton of brick boxes that you can see that they've done here. And I think that was like prevention, because they clearly saw that Pollo's team was W keyed by Ferdoxy. So they created a bunch of space, let them know they're a trio, that it's not like any of the solos that might be running around. and then have just instantly dipped. And now, rather than spending all that time trading with like, you know, like a lot of teams like we saw Malabuka's team way back here and stuff, they've rotated way deep, well, not super deep into the zone. They've rotated this way because it's a somewhat west zone, I guess. Now they're, I don't know if I'd say they're trading with Peterbot's team, but they are getting some damage off. I mean, you can't trade that much here if they don't have extra heals, so I do wonder if someone's going to go and, I was going to say loot extra. I don't know if there's anything really around that they can loot here to get extra heals. Of course, the benefit of surge trading early is the fact they have all the additional heals from your drop swap. But from here, I'm not really sure what they're actually going to be able to do. So they're not going to be able to tag too much damage back and forth. They're probably going to just have to look for teams who are rotating. And here's exactly the benefit of moving in Storm so early. Of course, they made that really early rotate, got to this position, and now all those Storm teams are stuck behind them. So for Doxy's team, for example, who was WKing, now they're WKing Victor V, picks Damage and Darm, can just sit in third party this and try and rack up as much damage as possible. Pretty much for free, because these two are going to be too preoccupied shooting each other, and they're going to look back and try to spray at picks. This has become a problem, though, because one of the main things we've been talking about across all of these wins is teams getting into early positions. Like the way Queasy team set up right now is so good, even though they actually did horribly this game. They are almost the furthest team away. They are here, and Paper's team, who's just been fought and they were holding, is literally the furthest team away. So let's see. I think this is basically just going to be Fizz, Crash, Rotate, but they're going to get held by the time they get in. So let's see how they actually end up getting away from that. All right, so they're white lining it straight into zone. Pre-building wood ahead of time is a good idea. So rather than actually waiting until someone's looking at you, just using a little bit of materials ahead of time, you're good. Now they're in metal, and honestly, not really many people have actually even looked at them. I guess this is kind of beneficial because of the way that the zones have ended up, or the zone is. Because there's this team, like, are they getting fought? I think they're getting, no, I don't think they're getting fought. None of these two teams actually really looked and sprayed back at them, which is quite surprising, to be honest. But I guess it's kind of beneficial because a lot of the teams that are down here, for example, like this little hill is going to keep them blocked. And then there's other teams like Malabuka's team, who's actually somehow managed to be later, where a lot of the teams are looking back and spraying them instead. But I do think a lot of the reason they didn't get sprayed there is actually just because they pre-built ahead of them, and then also got into hard mats, got this like big little tunnel going to prevent them from anyone just looking and being like, I just can't even be bothered. They're in metal. Pix gets a free lick here, gets a free finish. I'm not sure who it is on to. Probably Paper in the backside of Storm there. Probably we're just gonna lag. Yeah, just a bit of lag. But either way, free AR kill. Now, funnily enough, they have like no ammo either. 54, 32, and 91. So I want to see how they end up actually playing the end game out. Surge, not an issue, so they don't need to sit and spray one. Matt, also super chilling. And of course, they were pretty lucky with the 7th zone pool where they managed to get it here, which has been kind of a trend. Either you get lucky with a zone pool, or you're in a good position to use a Fizz crash pad to get into like full Deadside and get ahead and stagger from everyone. There's not been many teams who've had max distance 7th zone or 7th or 8th who've ended up winning a game. But again, it's all about how you put yourself in the position and how you take advantage of it. If this was max, I mean, it would be kind of concerning for them. So the Surge, because they basically haven't traded for a huge percentage of it, of course, they got little tags, they did all this. They're actually massively above. They're only like 160 above there. But with the good aim from Debush, they're keeping themselves slightly above to like 300, whatever. Also because they ended up layering up, which I did not talk about a second ago. So when they pulled zone here, they ramped up higher into the zone to give themselves more angles, which allowed them to get kind of those big tags there. But only 400 above, so it's not like they've been crazy trading like some of the other teams we've seen win games so far. All right, zone pulls pretty max over everyone else's head. Immediately Pix is setting up for the crash pad play. I wonder if they just go early as possible. They only have 3 crash pads left, but that's slightly fine. Have we seen some other teams? Crash straight off of the diagonal one, and they stay up on a high layer here. That's really good. I actually think they didn't have the Flowberry Fizz on there, so they didn't. I think they basically tried to stagger this. That's actually quite smart because they staggered once, which took them to their position they're in now with a single crash pad without using the Fizz. I don't know if that was intentional. Seemed like it was. And now from this high layer, they can wait until the zone starts to move. So as the zone's moving and this is kind of opening up here, everyone's going to be rotating at that time, and they can just kind of wait. As soon as the zone starts to open up, they can crash back here and fly it. That's actually not what they ended up doing, but I cooked a better strat than I think what they did. So no, not really. They've actually had a good strat too, to go down to the side. If you Flowberry Fizz at that point, you do run the risk of like the height team spraying you and just killing you. So I actually maybe don't think my cook was that good. But by going to this corner here, you can kind of do what Seti did and ramp into like this corner with one more crash pad, which I think is what they're going to end up doing here. And my predictions of what they're doing haven't been so good so far. But again, Surge now only 14 above, so not massively high for them. Yep, there we go. Exactly kind of what I thought. And they're using this hill to cut off line of sight too, which is really, really nice. Not sure it's the best time to do that because they're below Surge. So I don't really know if that's the kind of time you want to be cutting off line of sight from everyone. All right, they are now below Surge and need to get some damage dealt here. This positioning's not really done them any favors, but it will allow them to go for some like more concealed box fights. And they are very, very good fighters. Like Walks dies in here. Malabuka's still left. They can get the finish. Only 7 damage. Big damage onto that, but it's put them 85 up above. Max damage pump that was. I'm not sure how that put them. Maybe you got granted for the whole like 100. I'm not entirely sure. But nice little fizz rotate. Now they're down again because they're on that dead side. Ooh, that was really nice. Because they're down on the dead side here, they can kind of just rotate straight past. Good awareness to grab this B crate here. So the B rank crate is giving them 3 more crash pads. So they'd used all of them to get into that position. And now because they actually went for that on rotating on that kind of open dead side where there wasn't anyone, they're able to get more rotations to go through for the end game. Although most teams don't really use them much deeper. Also, extremely nice layering from Pix here. Notice how he didn't stay on that lower congested layer. He went 1 or 2 up so he could just kind of freely tarp over everyone there. A couple jumps with the Flowberry Fizz will just basically fly you straight over. Bunch of other teams on the layer now. They're still below. They're basically been teetering on the edge of Storm Surge this whole time. They have around 20 seconds to do. The Pix tarps are so good, man. There's got to be something in Poland teaching teams how to tarp amazingly. OCE teams don't know how to peak, unfortunately. Not great peaks for them. Pix managed to stay above. Again, Storm Surge isn't going to last that much longer. I don't know what the OCE teams are doing down below, but that seems free. Oh, we got a nice little Elim. Just pickaxes in, crouches to try and make sure he gets in. Dips out, doesn't want to try and overcommit. It goes too deep in. Drops rise straight into the box. Super duper nice. Okay, just a drop down. It didn't seem like they had that many mats. Yeah, 40, 50. Not like an insane refresh to get them like completely capped or anything like that. He jumps down to the front side. Good low ground claim now that it's the 10th zone. Good awareness from Pix to see that no one was there. Similar to Seti, he's just going to be tarping head. So instead of watching Pix, which is great tarper, I'm just going to look back and watch Darm and Demush because they're going to... What is this loadout? He's got the triple fizz on right now. But yeah, I'm going to watch these guys because I want to see how they actually end up fragging instead because they do get a good amount of elims this game. Just a little spray on the Sphinx. The crack from Darm. Only 10 builds left. I think he's going to get an elim any second now. Very active. He's always trying to look around, scout. Nice, that's onto Rapid. Do they tarp for that? I'm not sure they tarp for that. Maybe, don't really know if the finish was worth, but I guess maybe just going for the points. Teams start to box up on top of them. Look to try and chop them out. A little bit of an overcommitment to jump straight outside the box there, but player down below. Darm manages to spray through. That's another finish. Now he's got the siphon mats only from that. Oh, he's hovering, levitating into the clouds, it would seem like. Good block off the backside. This is a really, really nice tarp from Pix, creating so much space. Notice how Darm's... I'm not going to do the he walks backwards meme, but he kind of is. Anyone who goes diagonal off of them, he's always pressuring as much as possible. And that's why earlier on, when Pix was tarping, right, he went up a couple layers to make sure he wasn't just boxed right on top of someone else. There was a 1 or 2 maybe up above so that they have that space to work from to stop himself getting sprayed straight down into their box and box fall. Good awareness from him, seeing another team's on the backside onto the wall, pumped into the backside. Ooh, massive shot from Muzz there, taking him down to 3 HP. Maybe those 3 fizzes will come in clutch. Managed to get himself out of Storm. The splash is coming in clutch too. Zone pulls. He's got to get out. Ooh, Darm goes down on the low ground. Demush, max pump from him onto Yuna. Really nice peak there. Really peaked a little bit. Now, potentially going to get the double res. This is something we've seen twice. 2 wins now have had a double res on low ground. And that, once you've created so much space like that, it's something you can very much easier do because you can throw them back into a lot of the builds you've got somewhere. No one really knows where you are. Good shot. Massive aim from Shadow. Picking up Shadow, I mean. That was literally just a 3v1. The 2 height games we've seen so far from Sei's team and now from Pix, Demush, and Darm are basically just like... The height teams have both been totally shambles on this day, right? So the final 3v3, the actual win, the way that the low ground teams are winning in comparison to high ground teams is because most of the time, the high ground teams have just scuffed themselves. When the high ground teams are in like a fair 3v3, they nearly always seem to win. So it's interesting that basically the 2 or 3 low ground teams have basically just won the game because of everyone else is just left as a solo. But good job. Great job. Let's get into game number 10. Game number 10 was won by Sphinx, Muzz, and Shadow. Finally, something a little different. Something at the top of the map. You know, we've seen too many wins from this bottom corner. Now we're finally getting something up at the top left. So let's kind of see how their strat changes, the strength of their drop spot, etc. Straight away, they do have a good amount of space covered. They get all the way up into this area up here. Teams around them is Goofy, Vortex, and Mountain, another OC team who's basically just been trading with Murstache the entire time. So let's see what they actually end up doing. All right, so they've decided to set themselves up. They used a little launch pad to get themselves over to here, which is basically pinched between Vortex's team, which I just said before, Swizzy's team, and then I think they can also potentially see over to Reason's team. But it seems like the vast majority of their surge will more than likely be traded between Swizzy. Now, this is interesting because they actually really don't have that many heals left over. Of course, their base, their drop spot was resistance base over here, and they've rotated to this point here instead to surge trade. So there is like some chests here. You can get some additional loot, but you'll notice that they don't have like the crazy leftover heals that a lot of teams do. So I would imagine that their surge trading probably isn't going to be as crazy as a lot of the other teams will be because they just can't afford to take that much damage back. Potentially, we're going to see them return back to their drop spot or return somewhere. That is my prediction, to grab a bunch of extra heals afterwards. However, if you notice, there was actually another team. I think it was Ark's team who was just in resistance base there. So I wonder if they have to go back. It's a little bit of a long rotate to do it for. It is a bit of a time waste. So we'll see how this actually ends up playing out for them. Maybe they have to be an ethical Surge player rather than just trading like everyone else is. Well, they are. All right, I take it back. Everyone has absolutely juiced heals, as you can see in their inventory already. So apparently there was enough in this spot. My bad. Wrong analysis. But I do like here that the 4th zone's not even pulled yet, and they've already distanced themselves. So they've done a little bit of an earlier rotate to get themselves ahead here. And now let's see where the 4th zone ends up pulling relatively here. And since they're early, they've obviously cut themselves across from a lot of these teams. They can try and get themselves to, I don't know, somewhere near center. We'll see where they actually end up going. Relatively central on this zone and still pretty early as well. What a surprise. Center zones of 4th and 5th. This has never happened before. None of the other games did this, did they? I mean, also, this is a lot of the trends seem to be either like somewhere center or just fully playing Storm at this point in the game. Like most of the teams that we've seen win haven't been like stuck on congestion really at all. So they're about to be below Surge. They were 1500 above Surge earlier, but they've had like a very, very passive mid game up until this point. They've pretty much done nothing. Queasy's knocked on the other side though. They go for the triple spray. This was a game that actually ended up taking down our first place, and Mustache went down very soon after this. It's Agers who get shot into the back. Let's see if they commit in. They do. I love how Muzz isn't over committing because a lot of this isn't his build, so he's very, very aware that he could just get edited on. But they have jumped in and managed to get a full refresh. Only 250 above though. All right, this play here is really actually nice that they do in the end game. They're all stuck together, then a good layer. Kind of congested to be honest actually. So a couple players try to cut them off and it's Malabuka. Muzz sits back, just gets a super free Elim, super free refresh onto them. And yet again, they're trying to make sure they get the finish early on so they can grab a bunch of loot as much as possible, because again, this is not their edits. So they grab a bunch of this, and now because they've spent that time getting the refresh on the mats, they're in this kind of awkwardly scuffed spot just before the zone pulls back. So if you zoom in here, you'll see they're kind of stuck in Storm. Zone is about to, it's been pulling this way. They're at the backside. Now this is where the chug splashes come in really nicely, because they have 6 on Muzz, 4 on Sphinx, and then 4 on Shadow. So they have all of these mats and they're still in Storm. So it's the perfect time to play them, right? So they're just sitting in the backside, bunch of chug splashes, and now zone kind of pulls diagonally. So from this spot here, you can see that they have a free rotate. If they kind of just go diagonally this direction, they can really easily cut off the front side by staying in the Storm. That's kind of exactly what they do here. You see Sphinx opens up a path here for them to go through. He tries to block and take the shot behind him, and then he just cuts off all of the layers and creates a ton of space in that zone. So just by actually using a couple splashes or early investment, they probably saved themselves a ton of materials there. And now they have this basically entire low ground claimed. Now they've waited for the zone to catch up and to stagger, because they're about 14, 11, 27. They have a good amount of materials left. So now they let the zone catch up. They staggered a little bit, then they got ahead, and now just all 3 of them jumping together. This is something that's really important when you've got like almost no materials left whatsoever, is that all 3 players at least are just doing the same thing. It's really hard to make a bad play if all 3 of you are just doing it at the same time. Now I've seen many of them. I've done many of them. Good teamwork prevails. You can see another Elim on Shadow on the low ground, and that's enough siphon mats now to create a couple more tarps, a couple more boxes to keep them going. Shadow going a little crazy. The double pump on the low ground is so good. When all these teams are running low on mats, double pumping on low ground is actually just so broken. Like, ooh, lovely bang there from Shadow as well. The output from Shadow at this moment is actually insane. That's like 3-4 Elims he just got straight away, and the fact that none of them managed to get knocked whatsoever there is crazy. A little bit tough to try to go up the hill, but now it's a 3v2. Who else is left alive? Someone died in Storm. It's a 3v1 now versus Vanya. So the win, relatively free for them. This is actually really interesting. So Vanya goes into playing early heal off because it's a 3v1, but I actually think he makes a little bit of a milk here. Maybe it's just because he ended up crash padding not into the exact right spot, but he's looking for more mats to try and win the heal off when he does have an old base around here. So they have their heal off base earlier, which is back here. I think he potentially made a mistake by not crash padding all the way over here. He was looking for edits back in that other base there, when this is like the spot they always have all of their heals in. So he gets the med kit, just doesn't manage to get it, and then Muzz ends up winning by like a single tick to win the match. All right, the second last game was won by an unsuspecting trio that a lot of us weren't really paying that much attention to, which was Kadu, Tisco, and Striker, the Brazilian team. Now, throughout a lot of the day, the weekend, they've been really struggling with, Pablo's team, Retakes and Chino, who've been W keying them throughout basically like the entire match. But as you see off spawn, Pablo's team actually ended up dying in this game, so they didn't go over and W key Kado's team, so they didn't have that kind of off spawn awkwardness that they have been dealing with in so many of the other matches. And they ended up actually dropping 16 Elims, which is one of the highest Elim games we've seen across the tournament. So let's see how they actually did that. So what's funny here is you all day have pretty much had Gabzera, Way, and Scarpa going against King's trio, and they've been fighting back and forth. And now you also have the other team from South America also third partying here. So you basically have like all 3 teams from the same region in this final game all keying each other. Classic crouch up. Gabzera's knocked on the far left. Way runs out. 3-2-1 maybe. The 3-2-1, yep, single shot from Tesco manages to wipe him out. The Asia team's also getting involved. This is a mess. There's 4 teams here. Now, in this is like the second final game. So many people were WKing. Like, this was the least stacked game of the day by far, because a lot of the teams knew that they needed to have like a big pop-off match if they want to fly up the leaderboards. And Tisco's team did. You know, they had 129 points out of this. If you notice, they have a 226 now. After the end of the day, they ended up over 400, and 130 points of that were just because of this match. I really like how in this fight, I know I'm not really showing you in a bit, they're actually kind of staying on the outskirts. So notice how there's like so many teams around here, right? When there's such a huge mess, you don't want to do anything stupid and get involved. So for them, they're kind of just staying on this one complete side here, making sure they're not getting involved, right? And the worst thing you want to do when the fight has this many teams in it is be the one pinched in the middle. Like King's team right now is in such a bad spot. Whereas like Striker, they can disengage at any time if they need to. They can really pretty much do anything they want here. So they're in a very, very commanding position. So very, very good of them to stay there. I don't know why I've said that so many times in that way. I'm tired. It's been a long day. Then we get the Fizz crash pad. Obviously, the other two teams here ended up fighting, or at least one of the teams ended up moving over here. So they're being the third party yet again. They're not the ones being keyed, and that's Meram that then gets knocked there too. So that's now 2 free eliminations. I guarantee they're going to do the same thing yet. Not quite sure what happened there with the crash pad. I think another team, was that a team that third party? No, I think they actually just shot it out themselves. Straight on. Visuals gets pumped as well. I feel really bad for Visuals. They were basically W-keyed by every team throughout the entire weekend. It was very, very unfortunate for their team. Basically every single team, especially as we saw with the Veno win earlier, so many teams set up like counter strats to them. Nice, they just jump in. The Asia team down. So 4 elims off rip. Very good. And I think none of these, well, I was going to say none of these have been to major region teams. I guess Visuals team was. So one of the things we did see a lot across the weekend was that a lot of the minor region teams were just like fighting amongst themselves. And, you know, being one of the teams at the bottom of the lobby, like from an OCE, the Asia or the Middle East teams, like they definitely got farmed this entire weekend. Appears there's still a player hiding here somewhere. Where is he? It's Wixie's up above, drop down. Yeah, and he stands no chance. So 5 elims, super early. Similar to a lot of the successful games we've also seen, they went for the bunker, managed to get themselves this awesome little pistol, which is super duper broken. Now, they dropped 9 more elims from here, which is kind of crazy, I will be honest, in the end game. And this pistol is a big reason for that. I'm saying that, I don't even know if that's actually true. I could just be totally lying. Now, one of the funny things is that, of course, this was the game 11, where Queasy's team intentionally went and fought Vanya's team, which I'll have as part of my main channel video. And there, as you just saw, Striker's team, who won this game, was the one who ended up holding Murstache as they were rotating in late from the storm there. So basically, Striker's team had played a massive role in the fact that the last game was so close. So respect to them. Now, one of the reasons that they had such a good amount of success was the fact that they claimed this hill extremely early. Obviously, there's a lot of other teams already up there. You have like the Middle Eastern team, you have Peterbot's team, you have Cammy's team, all teams who I think did well in this particular match. But that zone ends up pulling directly up. And like, look how many of the teams were down below. Obviously, I mentioned that Queasy's team, they got to hold them earlier. So many teams who ended up, there's also, have I got anyone on draw distance? No, there's only teams here. So let me see. Yeah, they already kind of held them. I'm just skipping ahead. But there's so many teams that have to be pulled into them, right? Like Bolts' team down here who end up getting scuffed. Queasy's team, Braids and Diminish, who they keyed earlier. All of these teams who ended up like fighting together, they get another elim onto like Vortex, who gets pulled up into this area. So just by early getting onto this hill, they've managed to set themselves into a really good position just to hold a bunch of other teams. And I think they got 2 more elims here. Also, they get the elim onto Vortex at this point, and they do a very good play, despite the fact there's 3 piles of loot here. They're not greedy, right? They don't just drop down onto it, because that's an insta-death for all these other teams that are looking. Plus, there's all these teams who are already going for it, and there would just be a total mess. So good restraint from them just to sit back and kind of play out the fact that they've already got a good amount of mats, already got a good setup, and you don't want to throw it. You kind of see how that plays out similar in the next zone as well. They stay high up on this hill, and you see a bunch, I think it's King and Phaser. Yes, the King and Phaser they're shooting at right now, who's stuck down below. Phaser ends up dying. They get the surge on the body, which isn't super necessary. I don't think they actually got the knock on it. And then King flies up on a crash pad for some reason, and Insta gets wiped out. So the fact that in all of these hill zones, you see a big trend, of course, of teams who do not drop down. Do not drop down into those areas. It's not a bad idea. Stay up as much as possible on these hill zones. Same thing. They're not getting stuck behind at the end here, right? Like, as the zone pulls up over this awkward mountain, taking their time and going for a bunch of elims at this point. They're super stacked. The main focus is just to get up, 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 because you don't want to get suffocated down below by teams building over your head. So in these kind of zones, it's one of the main reasons it's so beneficial just to stay so far ahead, is because other teams aren't building on top of you quite as much. Again, because they've got basically such a good setup from the mid game already, they've not really needed to do anything. They've still got tons of mats. Like, Striker still has cat mats. This is a really, really nice zone tank. Similar to what we just saw in the previous game, they cut off the front side of zone there using the chug splashes, and then created created a bunch of space. So really good early claim of low ground, front side to wrap round, claim even more space. And now yet again, we've got the 2x2 straps. You can see how much space they're claiming. Most teams, I mean, this has honestly been an absolute staple of the low ground teams so far. It's just been creating 2x2 wide boxes. I need to sit and think about more of what timings you really want to do that in, right? Because if you're looking to get more elims on and especially like the last moving zone where it's really narrow, it makes a lot of sense to create a 2x2 wide because people drop onto you. It's pretty cool. But in like scenarios like this, I'm not 100% sure what the main benefit of it is. I guess it's because it's going into a zone transition, and if you do it in a zone transition, it gives you a bunch of space, gives you more space to work from, especially with like crash padding or angles to go for refreshes and things like that. But still, yeah. Also, probably mentioned, how is Striker 112 builds right now? 43. Man, have they been fragging? Wait, did Tisco get like a great refresh there? Let me see. No, they've literally just been playing their mats out this whole time, and I've just been very efficient with it. That's pretty sick. But now again, so the height take here is very, very nice. Good elim onto Shadow. So zone pulls up, and they kind of had this really nice right-hand peak. So from Peterbot's POV, you can't really see anything. So because they've created all of this space, they kind of all right-hand peak on the floor out of here, the edge of zone. And if you're Peterbot's team, like angle you have to look at to try and see them is so minimal, right? Like you can see the peak there. That's like the only angle that they'd be able to look out from. And of course, all three of them are looking the other direction because zone is about to pull back. So the timing of this is great. It's a zone transition where the zone's about to pull back, which means most of the people on height are not going to be looking at the teams who are already at the front side, right? They've rotated a little deeper here, so at the front side, whereas Pete's team on height is looking at the back. Then that gives them the opportunity to look straight up and spray out. See if they end up actually getting the full chop here. Don't able to get the full chop, seems like, but great high retake or great like chop out regardless. One thing that's also really important that especially when you look at solos a lot is that by chopping people on height, whether you take it or not, almost almost always a good play if you have like the time to do it, because you just grief their mats every single time, which is always beneficial. Right now they're gonna do a similar. Ooh, this is really nice. Are they gonna crash pad? Yeah, they do. Crash pad up onto high ground from the backside of Storm. Do they have any splashes? They actually don't have any splashes. That's kind of an interesting play to make when you don't have any white heals, like to tank so much Storm. But the timing to chop was really nice, and then the timing to go up for it from the backside of Storm was really nice. It would have been better there if they'd crouched, not make any footstep audio, because Pete's team could have been aware that they were still in the backside of Storm because of that. Gets the and also if they had splashes, even better. But I guess if you had splashes, there'd be the visual audio to see them fly up. So potentially not like 100% the best play. Either way, they took height, so that's it. Then honestly, kind of similar to the previous game. Because they've managed to stay alive as a full trio, it is literally just a 3v1 straight into the box, and they managed to win the last game. And that's a second from iDrop, Cammy, and Harry's team, which I think went very under-noticed here, or unappreciated and unnoticed, because they also win the next game, game number 12, which actually fires them up into 4th overall in the leaderboards. So as I mentioned, game number 12 won by Harry, iDrop, and Cammy. And bus path is actually something that obviously we've kind of mentioned a few times without this video, mainly from the Veno POV. But again, from here, they land at this kind of north shining span split here. If I push 4, you'll be able to see Harry is here. And this spot gives them access to spray anyone whilst you have that south bus pass, right? So from here, they can land here, and all these teams are still going to be flying north of them. So it allows them to get a little knock out the sky. I think they full aggro and WQ for this too. No, they don't actually. Cammy actually ends up building out. That's really nice. So Cammy from the split side over here ends up just building out a few floors, just so he's like visibility onto the finish there, so they can get like a free couple, like an elimination point plus 100 more surge. Now the way that they're looting this is actually really efficient, because as you notice, they're basically started at the top, and now they're looting their way down south. So essentially what this means is a lot of the teams might try and cut them off up here. So like if Peterbot was bad, they ended up dipping and going up this side. So by looting all of this kind of north area and then start dipping down south the bridge, they're efficient time-wise because they stop this getting cut off, but also they're going to position more than likely at the south side here, where the most of the time they were like trading with one of these teams. So it's like time efficient. They have to stand here and then somehow rotate up later. They grab all this, rotate down, hit the barrels as you can hear them doing right now, and then set up for surge. So just like good planning generally of their off spawn. So interesting, after trading a bunch, don't need to go into that. We already know what's going on there. They then rotated south into Kappa. Now this is interesting because obviously you have a relatively south zone. So what a lot of teams would do would kind of W key this, or not W key, they'd kind of white line straight in, get to the south. But for them, they essentially wrap all the way around the edge of the map, which allows them to come through on this side here, which is relatively dead. Now the hills make this kind of awkward, but I'll show you how they end up actually rotating that in a second. So as they go into outpost here, you can see healing up. They only have not that many whites. I wonder if that's 3 medkits that they've got there. We will see when he actually ends up picking it up. It is only 1. Okay, so they have that many whites. Okay, there's more here left. Okay, there's more left over. You can usually go to these flags to actually grab more whites as they have here, just because a lot of people don't end up taking the med mist and things like that from them. So they found a launch pad there. Use the launch pad with the fizz, have extra whites, points. And again, they can then rotate all the way down the south side of the map. Then guess what? They pop the medkits and then they do the exact same thing yet again. So that's kind of how they get away from this kind of awkwardness from down here, like Poyo seem they don't want to rotate past them. You can kind of go up onto the hills at this point and get a great power position for the rest of the game. However, that's not what we see, because as you notice, when they land, they see the gliders in the air, and that's actually Poyo's team up above. So they managed to get a free elim onto Agers, which they instantly W key because elim point, super important. And of course, like they still want a ton of surge too. I think it's Cammy that ends up going over. Yep, full boxes at max surge as well, so that's Agers down. I don't think they end up taking like the fight further onto this, but they basically put themselves into already like a very, very, very good position. A little bit of server lag, but you can't see that, but good awareness from them. As soon as another team moves in, so they got the one elim, Reach team who ended up pushing in here, they just said, okay, we're going to crash pad down, we're getting away from this. Also, their mats are like 100, 100, 100 each, which is not fantastic for this point in the game, like 4th zone, but because they've already got their surge, by going down into Canyon Crossing here, they can refarm pretty much anywhere if they need to. Also, this next zone pulls up, so I'm not entirely sure that that's the goal that they'll want to. But I don't think they have any whites still to date, so they can potentially look for maybe more medkits, yes, just as I found, potentially more bigs, just to get them basically back up to HP and then figure out where they want to rotate from there. Now, what's funny is they end up going into this building here north of Canyon, which is entirely metal outside of those floors on the low ground, if I remember correctly, which is like an insanely good spot to like re-harvest all your materials, in particular if you got this pad for later on. But if you notice their mats, like Hari has 35 brick, Cammy 70 swings, he has cat brick, and then iDrop has like a little bit less. So what they actually need more than metal is probably brick. Maybe not entirely, but yeah, if they'd managed to get that somewhere as they rotated, it would have been much better for them to set up. Still a really, really good spot to reharvest anyway. Something we've seen a ton of the successful teams so far do is just find any, I don't know what I'm saying, cut like crap. Hold on, let me start that again. Actually, just cut that bit entirely, who cares? All right, 6th zone ends up popping up, similar to everyone else. Fizz. It was that was not, was that Fizz? That was actually a Fizz crash pad. Yep, diagonal. Cut off everyone else. Almost every single partial zone instantly rotate. Why does iDrop have a DMR with him? What is he cooking up right now? I love here that iDrop is sitting spraying out the trees as they rotate here. So they know their line of sight's cut off from a lot of the teams that are rotating past. So he ends up shooting out a lot of the trees. And this one too. So a huge amount of trees in the 6th zone to make it really difficult for any team to rotate in. And that's some of the beauty of their position. Similar, you can see they're like quite deep in from the edge. And now all of this area to the east is just like wide open. Like if I pull the camera out, you'll see because they've shot out these trees, basically a huge percentage of this area is open. And all of the teams are going to rotate into them because they rotated early. So this should be free damage for them if they really ever need it. I mean, they're 900 above, so they don't really need to kind of overcommit to it at this point. But generally, I think a good habit to get into if you have the additional ammo. Are we going to see an early Fizz rotate? Yes. They did not go through the floor. That was the bug. It wasn't quite as early as before, but no one is going late. I want everyone to know this with the crash pads. I've said it a lot. No one is going late. Good connection there down from iDrop 2. So now because they've been relatively inactive, they were like 900 above, but they're only like 60 above at this point. So the Storm Surge has been extremely brutal to a lot of these teams who think they're above, but then come to that like final threshold. All of the top teams have been trading so extensively and so hard that it's like you just immediately are dropped below. So yeah, from here we're going to see something good for them. It's not a huge amount of damage that they'll need. There's only a few elim, like only a few players left until you actually need to, you know, the Storm Surge is over for the rest of the game. So good job firstly from Cammy, creating a bunch of space, getting to the front side, right? He's got a lot of space claimed, and now all like iDrop and Hari need to do is just literally hit a couple of shots. And because they have so much space, like it's super, super free. They're set up to do that very, very well. Team's box next to them, super free spray. Yep. And there's what, like 200 damage from iDrop almost, maybe 150 or something like that. Puts them straight above. Ooh, pre-edited in on the backside there. iDrop goes down. I love that he goes back and deeper into the tarp. Of course, Cammy's created enough space for them to end up working from. And then Cammy and Hari end up like counter-aggressing that. They end up actually fighting back, which gives iDrop the time to heal. Lovely crash pad. I want to show that from Cammy's POV. All right, let's do a little Tarper analysis here because there's one thing I think Cammy does here that's really, really nice on this zone transition. So like I already mentioned, these guys are coming into the backside, spraying. Now the zone ends up pulling north here, okay? And you can see that they're kind of on this right-hand side of the zone. So you can see what Cammy does. Tries to pressure back, peeks through the cone, takes a little scout. It's scuffed, right? Really scuffed. There's a lot of layers, a lot of people going through. So he rotates in Storm all the way to the west. You'd think he's like tarping the wrong direction, right? Rather than going north, he's tarped to the west. But now he goes in crash pads. So he's got a completely free crash pad. And now they're still on that west side of the zone, the complete left side there. As I say that, iDrop gets knocked. How did he get knocked? Let's see. It seems just like a little bit of an unfortunate hold. They got focused as they did that there. there. Unlucky timings, but they managed to get the double rest, and the full trio is still back up. Great awareness from iDrop, despite the fact he's weak, to take over from Tarping and get to the front side, because I think he was the only one who had like good... No, everyone had mats. Okay, I take it back. Either way, he knew what they needed to do, get off that bad layer and drop down. That's something you need. There's also very nice Tarping from... Oh, let's see that. Good blocking with the stairs. So what I was actually going to mention was the stairs that Kami ended up placing here. Jumps around the side of the storm. And then I love these stair tarps. I've seen this from a few different players so far. So placing the floor up above, placing the stair to catch himself. He's in this really scuffed layer, right? There's a lot of stuff going on around him. Really easy for him to get shot. And these two pieces of build basically cover you from almost every single angle there. Now he's able to get up, create a nice little tarp. Now that he's finally into a good spot, it's not scuffed with a bunch of other players' builds. And now he can create like a full tarp himself. It was interesting having Kami and Seti on one team for so long, because both of them are such good leaders and tarpers, and they're not incredibly like mechanical fraggers. I'm actually quite happy to see them split on different teams now, because both of them are having a great success individually. Similar thing there. I love this, right? Zone pulled. They were around this area. Zone pulled northeast, and they tarp straight north. So typically, rather than going straight towards zone or doing a diagonal tarp, you can see that he ended up from basically around this box where iDrop is here, tarping straight north and then starting to go over. So yet again, creating a tarp that keeps him to the complete edge of storm. No, so from these angles, obviously he has good angles to like spray up onto height and all these other things, but also just keeps you away from, I was going to say keeps you away from the vast majority of players, but that's quite funny that a lot of the other teams have done basically the exact same thing rather than just like white lining, which would be this direction. So good awareness from them to get onto the straight sides there. Nice, he gets a good knock onto Phaser there, who's just standing on his wall. It's only siphon mats. Good awareness from Kami also to see that that is the height team that's going up there. So he ends up getting the knock onto Phaser, and I think iDrop ended up getting the knock on the backside there. Let's see how he ended up doing this. Chip, as they're creating this lovely tarp that I was mentioning here in the 11th zone, looks up, height's connected by wood, that's it chopped down. So it's a good awareness from iDrop. At this point, they know height is scuffed, especially since one's straight in the box. King's dead into the backside. He gets the finish there, cranks up, knowing that height's relatively scuffed. Marius completely lost in the sauce. He gets pumped. That pump potentially could have basically just lost Marius the FNCS, to be honest with you, and now they've claimed height. Well, outside of Pixie, who's kind of trying to go crazy right now. From there, it's just clinical. The 3v1, 3v2 currently, but Cooper's on like 10 HP, so it's basically a 3v1 at this point. The double pump, he's knocked out. They have Storm Sickness, so iDrop basically can't tank a single tick. One pump, straight down, wins game number 12, pulls him all the way up to 4th overall. Super duper impressive. Now, I'm going to be doing another video covering the winners, which I've already mentioned in this video already. I'm going to put a lot of effort into it. It's usually my biggest video of the year, so if you want to make sure that you don't miss that out, click subscribe over here so you see it. It'll be up probably at the end of next week. Hope you enjoyed this one. Peace.